This is the Limo Show.
This is not another story. This is not another drill. I refuse to be another number.
I just want to have like kind of a background. So now you're the author of The Intelligent Millennial.
Yeah.
And it's your first book, or have you?
It's my first book. So basically, what it is because I have a I have a brand with another person called the New Gen Mindset, which is it's a business investment and equity analysis podcast where the premise is you talk about anything related to finance and business and stock market, economics, things like that. And we have a little blog, and I would write some articles here and there sometimes. And then I was focusing on a topic which had to do with trends related to businesses, how businesses have to follow trends in order to ensure viability looking long-term. Because if a business doesn't think long-term, it then falls apart. And to think long-term, you have to think about trends. And trends are heavily dictated by generations. So I was trying to write a little article about it. And then eventually it kind of led me down this route of, okay, well, there's more than just economics that is heavily impacted by generational trends. You have politics that are impacted by it. You have the way people think as a collective that are impacted. Then that is heavily correlated to how the economy then reflects itself based on how the people think and how the government thinks. Yeah. And then it led me down this route of, okay, well, then in reality, there's also a lot of problems, and then you have to look at the educational aspect of things, the way we communicate, the way we govern ourselves. And then I was like, well, you know what? Let me make it. Then I was like, at a certain point, I was 2,000 words in. I was 5,000 words in. I was like, okay, this is going to become a book now because I'm just keep writing and I can't post it as a blog. If I post it as a blog with 10,000 words, it doesn't make sense. Yeah. Nobody's going to read a blog post that long. So I just decided, screw it. Let me make it into a book. And then I thought about The Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham, which is one of the most classic books. Right. And that's why I called it The Intelligent Millennial. And I made it look like it just so people that know finance or that know the book, they kind of get that connection in their brain. Because the premise is now in the world of economics and finance, the market is so much more complex than it's ever been in history. It's never been this dynamic. It's never been this complex. People have never had access to this much information. So the issue is people don't know how to filter information anymore. So our intellect hasn't adapted to the complexity of the system. So the premise, literally the last sentence of my book is how millennials need to become intelligent before they become intelligent investors. If you want to do well nowadays in our current system as an investor, you have to know how to now filter and process the information of the craziness of our system, which is more complex than ever. So the premise is, as a millennial, as a new apex generation, become smarter and everything else will fall into place.
Yeah. Exactly.
So that's the premise of the.
Yeah. Continuous learning and continuous training and how do you tell millennials to actually become intelligent people?
One is conversation. Have more conversation, and two, stop thinking you're right about everything because the premise of intellect is not about wanting to be right. It's about wanting to have answers.
Yeah.
But everybody wants to think they're always right about something, so they automatically close their brain to a conversation. And then they're afraid to be wrong because being wrong makes them feel like they're not smart. But everyone starts somewhere. You have to assume you're wrong in order to always search for an answer. That's the premise of science. Science doesn't say I am right, the scientist. The scientist says I know the topic. I want to solve an answer. Let me just research and trial and error. The same premise goes with investing, everything. Error leads you to better root the question that you're trying to solve. You start vague and you narrow in. And the same premise should fall with the way you build your intellect. Look at big themes and then narrow down macroeconomics. Just people have too much bias in the way they assume they're right when the premise of intellect is just be open to conversation, be open to learning, and just be open to wanting to have an answer rather than wanting to be right. Because wanting to be right creates the bias in your conversation. Because then you get angry and then people think you're an idiot. When I don't care. It's not about you being, I just want to share the information with you. have a conversation. If you're wrong, I'm telling you why you're wrong. But if you want to assume you're just right because you're right, your ego is satisfied knowing you're just right, well, then you're never going to develop yourself.
Yeah. There was this quote, like, the beginning of wisdom is knowing that you actually don't know anything, like that you have actually everything to learn.
There's
No, but I see that because I give dating advice to some guys, dating and lifestyle advice. And there's a lot of guys that have this, they think they get it. They think they're so competent as a man. They know all the dynamics, etc. And when you introduce a new dynamic, when you introduce them to like deep female psychology stuff, they get into denial. And they have this cognitive dissonance in their brain between like the belief that they're so competent and they know everything. And on the other side, the belief that, no, actually, you don't know shit. Like, this is how it works, and this is how you should be doing, So,
100% agree. Because at the end of the day, psychology for me is the dictating factor to everything. In the book, they were talking about how at the center of the entire system is the individual. The individual's psychology dictates how we do everything, right? I have my own psychology. You have your own psychology. If I don't know how to resonate with your psychology, well, we can't collaborate ever. The same premise goes to whether you're dating with somebody or you have friends or you're working with somebody. If you as an individual cannot collaborate with me as an individual, which is dictated by your mind, then it falls apart. If you want to have a conversation with a girl, you have to understand where her head is, how she thinks, how evolution shaped her behaviors consciously and subconsciously. And by doing that, you then now better resonate with the dynamic of understanding how a female works and behaves, which then makes you more confident because you're less clueless as to what the hell's going on.
True. Awesome, man. So, man, it's crazy that, for your first book, it had so much like, upfront success. A lot of the guys I see, in the world of writers, etc., like their first book is usually, it's like nobody knows about it or something. And then maybe in the third book or their fourth book, they're like a big bestseller. So what's your secret? Did you have like some mentors that guided you through like,
honestly, it was just, I before I got to this point, I realized that the value of doing anything in this world, whether it's to become an expert, whether it's to build a brand, is your network.
Yeah.
I just wanted to meet people, talk to people. Isma, I met him through a really good friend of mine. And he met me, he's working with the music industry and working with artists. And then I met Isma through him because they're also working at a corporate level. And I just like dealing with anything related to the way people think and operate. I just want to meet people. So I didn't realize that having conversations with people as a friend, rather than just imposing yourself to force something, that alone builds your network. And then when you do something, people want to collaborate with you. So people are willing to share your stuff. People just want to be a part of it. So the network is what I focused on. And then I realized more and more after writing this is that my network is the key. Let me focus on my network. Let me focus on building that. And the network will allow me to compound my reputation, will allow me to compound my growth. Mm-hmm. It just connected to me as because I have such an investment mindset, the way I perceive things was very, very correlated to that. It's build and compound time after time. It'll just add, it'll grow. And the more people you meet, the more who you are can expand into the world. So if I'm trying to write a book, well, then by having a better network, a bigger network that respects me and acknowledges who I am and what I do, well, they're willing to share and work with me and share what I've done with other people.
Yeah.
So it was just that. I've always done everything on my own, but I've always focused on wanting to have as much conversation as possible. That's why I've always disliked clubs and stuff like that, because I couldn't have a conversation with, I'm a guy that really likes to sit down. I'll have a drink, I'll have a cigar. Well, I don't mind that stuff, but I want a conversation. That's how I connect with people. That's how I get to understand how people think. Through the conversation, the words you use, the way you word things, what you say, how you resonate with things. And I mean, at the end of the day, when you get to a certain point, whether you're an artist, this or that, everybody still now is resolved around money. Everything still somehow encompasses money. So because I like the premise of money and economics, it still resonates whether you're an artist because you're trying to build a brand and you're trying to make money out of it. Yeah. Whether you have a business and you're a manager, you're trying to manage a client and make sure he builds his brand. So everything for me still resonates with what I love to do either way. So I'm not afraid to meet people no matter what they're in. And I just want to meet people, talk, and just build on that. And then by doing that, my my brand and what I do will grow as a result of that consequence. It's a pure causation. I don't even need to depend as much on Instagram and Facebook ads and expand it. I can use my network and build it and strengthen that network, and that alone will help me expand myself.
True. And for free. And
Exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. And so what are the systems that you put out in your life to build your network? Like, do you have a weekly, cocktail thing that you go to, or do you have or do you network on Instagram?
I have a lot of different groups. Like, after I finished university, I got into the restaurant industry. I became a waiter, and waitering was a big part of how I developed my social skills, and also how allowed me to also watch people, because you're dealing with so many clients. You get to observe a lot of people and their psychology. It was one of the most fascinating things for me, was just observing people and seeing how they behave, the conversations they had at the table, whether you're male and female, a female and a female, male and male, whether you're a family, just how people thought and operated. And the more I became social, the more I just wanted to go out and meet people. And I always said to myself, don't ever say no to meeting somebody, because you don't know what the conversation is going to lead to. Once you have the conversation, you can then decide afterwards, is it worth my time to fuel that relationship more, or do you walk away and go on to another step? I always make sure to never say no. When my friend Leander, who's friends with Isma, wanted to go out and said, "Do you want to come?" I said yes, because I just wanted to meet people. So my intent was never to pursue networking and meeting people, but I never said no to meeting somebody. If somebody wants to meet me, if somebody wants to have a financial conversation, if somebody wants to talk about business, somebody wants to talk about investing, if somebody wants to talk about just anything remotely with politics, history, I'm down to have a conversation. And then from there, I'll establish whether or not I pursue putting more time, as we say, sweat equity in business. So putting time into it, energy wise, not money wise, sweat equity. Right. Exactly. So the way I think of people is, okay, I met you. How do I think of you? Am I willing to put more time and sweat into building that relationship? And that's why Isma, I continuously have conversations with them on Instagram. My friend Leander, I meet them. I just like to meet people, because at the end of the day, if I'm going to say that the network is the most important aspect of who I am and what I'm trying to do, because the network is going to decide whether or not I'm an actual expert. I don't want to self-proclaim myself an expert. I am trying to build a specialty in what I'm trying to do. And for me to establish the specialty, I need my network to respect it. So my purpose is making sure I add value to my network and build on those relationships. And it was more of a self-realization thing that it helps. I get to have more conversations. I get to meet more people. I get to build something by meeting people. And that was really what ignited my desire to just continuously meet people.
Yeah. Network is your they say your network is your net worth.
Exactly. You have the tangible aspect of things, which is your money, that dictates one aspect of your net worth. And then the aspect of it is the life of who's in your network, who do you have relationships with, who adds value to your life. Because the more people that add value to your life, you add value to theirs, and it just grows from there. It's compounding. The premise of one of the greatest wonders of life, they say, is the compounding. And it applies to everything, whether it's money or people, whether it's intelligence, knowledge, it builds. So
I guess your strategy for investing is mostly like a kind of a Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger type of investing, where you invest long term, right?
So the premise, because I have a consulting business called the Imperium Mind. So the premise of it is basically there's two aspects to it. I am a wealth advisor for individual clients. So people that want to be their own investors, that don't want to go to the bank, that want to be more attentive to their money, but not necessarily have the ambition or the drive or the obsession with paying attention to politics, economics, psychology, and the everyday dynamics of the market. I am their advisor, as in a company has a board of advisors that sits on them and helps them think long-term and helps them make very strategic decisions. I take that same role with my clients, but they themselves have complete control over their money. I have no control. I'm just the guy that talks to them and helps them build an education, build a better connection with their money, and focus on building wealth. And that's how I focused on that. And then I have another aspect of my business, which is strategic advisories for corporate companies and startups, because at the end of the day, even if you're a business and you have a passion for something, if you're not focused on properly aligning yourself as a business and operating like a business, you may not necessarily succeed, even though your idea is brilliant. So the part of business and how people have to focus on dynamics and negotiating and just thinking about optimizing every aspect of your business, I wanted to take a role in that too. So my obsession just became about stocks and investing and asset classes and economics and behavioral economics and psychology and optimizing departments within your business, because the more you optimize your business, the more you become like a spear. You can just penetrate better and better. So
a nice analogy. True.
Yeah. So, and what I realized is that because of social media, because of our telephones, the way you look at the stock market, the way you look at how people process information and invest now is on an entirely different level than it ever was in history. So as much as I respect Benjamin Graham and the Intelligent Investor, as much as I respect a lot of the OGs in the industry of finance, what's occurring now, to my perspective, is there's a complete shift in how the market is clashing with the different dynamics and all the overload of information, which is why you have so many more investors that are retail investors, which is average people that just want to open their own investment account and do their own trading. And that's why it creates a lot more irrational movement in the market now. Because of social media, because of constant access to information, because of being able to just do it yourself so quickly, the market is so chaotic now. There's a new terminology. So in typical finance, you have a terminology, bull and the bear market, right? Yeah. So the market goes up, the market goes down. Now we have a new terminology that seems to have appeared. That's called the kangaroo market, which is just up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. Up hopping, you up 30%, you're down 30%, up 30%, down. That has never been seen. But then you have to ask yourself, why are we seeing that now? Well, one, you have a lot more retail investors. And two, they're able to have access to information and to investing at a level never seen before. So I decided to evolve the premise of why the market is shifting the way it is. The market was developed heavily by older generations. And the way they saw things was at a calmer pace than at a slower pace. But the market is operating at a new level that has completely adapted to speed and access. And people, amateurs typically, retail investors have not learned to evolve the information from the past and contextualize it to the current landscape and reality of the market. That the market is not truly the way it was before. Because the market has adapted and evolved because of who we are as a generation, we now have to evolve the way we invest and look at the market as well. I could spend my day watching information on the stock market, day in and day out, politics, everything. But if you still respect the premise of old value investing, you may not necessarily see as much value in the market anymore because multiples are higher. Businesses grow at a much quicker rate than ever before because of technology. Balance sheet may not necessarily be as beautiful as you want it to be, but because you're focusing on growth, it could clean itself out. So it's become so much more complex that I just, I believe in value, but in the sense that you have to learn how to contextualize the past history into looking forward based on new variables that have been presented by our generation, which is our phone and access to information and our desire, because our generation has a very gambling mindset, very short-term fixated, which you can see in the way we operate among humans, the way we operate with girls, the way we operate. We're just so fixed on the short-term result that we focus that if you play a little bit of a game, we think a little long-term, the first date may not work, but the second date, you'll get exactly what you want. But you want the immediate result now that it messes with your intent and the way you behave and operate, which literally reflected in whether you're looking in relationships or the stock market. It's all there. So I love those old G's, but then again, I do believe that there's a shift that has to occur in how we go about value investing and strategically investing. And that impacts everything nowadays.
Super interesting. Yeah. No, so true. And I see it with platforms like eToro or things like that, where it's very social and people can comment on the ticker. Like you see the ticker of the stock, people can comment, why is it so down? Should I triple down? Yeah, you should. No. And then people gamble, as you said.
Yeah, exactly. And, there's so much fear of missing out. It's called FOMO, that people will use fear as a reasoning to do an action, when in reality, intelligence will tell you, sit down, relax, think, ask yourself the proper question, and then tell yourself, is it worth it or should I wait? Sometimes you're better off just waiting a little longer than making an irrational decision just because you fear of something occurring and you're not part of it when you have your entire lifetime to make countless decisions.
Yeah.
But that fear of missing out, that short-term fixation that people have, that gambling mindset, it's so powerful that it destroys their entire outlook of things.
Yeah. There's this thing, I don't know if you know Richard Thaler, which is an economist. He made the book like called Nudge. I'm not a fan of Nudge, but
okay,
he made a study of temporal discounting, where people undervalue, like people would rather have, you know, money now than a lot of money in the future.
Absolutely.
And it's kind of that. It's like the loss aversion bias, if you want.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
That's
100%. And I entirely agree with that. And that's why I heavily correlate always to the psychology. I say, if you understand your psychology as an investor, as a business person, you can better control your success and your results, because you as an individual, as a human being, have so much irrational thoughts normally that if you can control your behaviors and your mindset, then that's one less risk factor that you have to worry about. But it's one of the biggest risk factors, because you might flip-flop on decision, because the thing is, to say to yourself, let me wait 10 years for a result, is a scary idea, because if in 10 years you don't succeed, that's 10 years you just wasted. So a lot of people are very afraid to think long-term, because it's you have to wait a long time. But when you say, I want quick short-term results, it means that I want that immediate satisfaction. I want immediate gratification now. Give it to me now. And that's why people love to gamble, especially in our generation. It's now, not long-term. But when you look at successful people and you imitate their patterns, they always focus long-term. They never focus the short-term. Mm-hmm. So if you want to just play the common sense game, imitate successful patterns. And successful patterns always tell you, think long, work long, and things will work out, because your objective is long term.
Absolutely. Yeah. And sometimes, don't you agree that, you know, there is like some black swans, some key opportunities that, you know, if you don't miss them, you need to take them to get the money now, you know?
Absolutely.
Like the coronavirus, you know, things like that.
Absolutely. So that's where hedging comes into play. Whether it's any aspect of your life, you have to account for a hedge. A hedge is just in order to ensure yourself that if something were to happen that you cannot account for, like a black swan, you're ready for it. And that's why wealthy people, when you look at portfolio management and wealth management, they're always hedging themselves. Even if, for example, a billionaire might say, I don't like Bitcoin, but because generational trends are showing me that Bitcoin might become a thing, just from a generational perspective, regardless of it being an investment, a real investment opportunity, well, let me just put 1% of my net worth in it, just because if it does become something and it takes away the capital within another sector, well, at least my money still exists.
Yeah.
So when you have more money you build, the more you become an economy as a system, the larger your economy, like Amazon, for example, it's $1.5 trillion plus, Microsoft, 1.5 trillion, it's Apple, 1.5 trillion, like they're all over the $1 trillion mark. When you become that size, in order to make sure you sustain yourself for 100 years, not only do you need cash, a good balance sheet, a good operation, you need to think about each generational trend and need to ensure that you can adapt yourself to black swans. The supply chain was a big issue with a lot of companies, and that showed a lot of disconnect between old industries and new industries. Because when the black swan came, for example, with this COVID, it shut down a lot of our supply chain. Yeah. So the logistical industry, huge, tourism, trains, buses, moving supplies around became a big issue because people couldn't move anymore and you couldn't transport things because it's a human factor. So black swans, that's why, for example, one of my biggest focus on hedges now has become that you cannot fight entirely nature. Nature is in its own dictating force. It'll always do what it wants to do, and its challenge is always to evolve and become the apex. So as we just saw now, this virus came out of nowhere and started killing people, and well, at least triggering underlying conditions. So as a hedge, we need to make sure that we better build on our infrastructure and our supply chain, and that we better adapt ourselves to variables that aren't accounted for that be caused by nature. What happens if one day we have an EMP wave where it hits out all of technology? How do you go about operating your entire system now? As a government, the government should be focused on hedging that outlook, because if the system falls, which is entirely dependent on technology, how will there be order after? It'll be complete chaos. Everybody's wealth is tied to technology in one way or another, because it's online, this and that, your houses. If ever one day there's that type of wave and it knocks out well, what do I do now? How do I operate my life? How do I buy food? How does the government help me? How do I communicate with the government? All those questions have not been answered. And it's like we're defying nature by saying, well, we're the apex as a generation, as a species we are, but nature will always win if it wants to win.
Yeah.
Because we live on Earth, which is not our land, it's the Earth's land. We're just a species living on it. If something happens, it'll still exist, but we'll fade away.
Yeah, it's like we're just renters,
That's literally how it is. We are renting the land to do what we want to do, but we can never forget that the land can destroy us because it has more control over what happens in the world from the natural perspective than humans. We only have control over what we built. That's it. That's all. Mm-hmm. So the black swans are massive, significant investment opportunities because it creates so much chaos that you get 30% dips. And then within 2 months, you recover, you make 30%, which is something you rarely see anymore. But the way the market moves now is a kangaroo. You want to look for bottoms and you want to look for tops. That's it. That's all. If you start trying to invest in between, you're going to either lose money, especially depending on your horizon. So black swans for me are like the golden opportunities that I look for now. And that's it. The rest of it is observe, watch, and wait for those critical moments to jump in or jump out.
Yeah.
And that's it. It's more of a patient approach and taking one of observation. Mm-hmm. Like I'm sure if you go with your clients, when you go on a date, you don't just strategically say, go to her at any point. Wait for something to build. Wait for a little connection to occur. Wait for you. If there's girls among friends, don't while she's immediately dancing with her friend, don't go pull her out. Like wait for an opportunity. Observe and just wait for something to build before you make your presence shown. You don't want to show dominance immediately. You want to build up the suspense. You want to wait for a critical moment. So everything, I just find that everything, no matter what you look at, as long as humans are involved, it all has the same premise of the way we go about doing things.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that, psychology is like, 80, like more than 80% of the game? Or
it's king to everything. No matter what I do in this world, as a human being, my psychology is the dictating factor of everything. I truly believe that it is the king factor to anything. No matter what people will talk about, psychology is important.
Yeah.
You want to understand history, you want to put it into context, your psychology has to be able to properly process it and then properly contextualize it into the new dynamics of psychology and social behaviors, which is all dictated by psychology. The way me and you operate as a human being, the way me and you will talk to each other will be dictated by how we think as individuals. If you're very closed off, that's because of your brain. If you're very open, it's because of your brain. If you're male, your brain has certain subconscious behaviors dictated by evolution. If you're a female, there are certain subconscious behaviors dictated by evolution as well. Being aware of those things allows your brain to better process and better engage with that dynamic. For me, psychology is the king to everything.
Are you a big student of like, are you nerding on like cognitive biases and things like that? Like, are you like
to be aware as a self-awareness objective? Absolutely. Yeah. When something happens, am I about to be a bias or am I going to be open in the way I think about it? I want to be able to control myself. If something happens, I need to know that I have more control over my thoughts than somebody else has control over my thoughts because they say something. I do not want my behavior, my character to be devalued by an external factor. I want my internal force to be the main dictating power over my own thoughts. So I need to be fully aware of all psychological behaviors, of psychological dynamics, of biases, of all those different things. That's why I also love to do trial and error in the stock market. That was how I learned one. It was, let me try something. Even if I lose my money, why did I lose my money? What did I do in this strategy? What did my brain think that made me want to do this? Mm-hmm. And then from there, I know exactly how that the link occurred. Okay, that's where it was broken. That's where it didn't. And that's kind of how I thought about my book, Well, if I want to improve the system in order to become better as a system overall, where are the broken links within our system that need to become optimized in order for the system as a collective to improve and evolve?
Yeah.
And it's all, again, connected to our psychology. Your psychology can be better educated. Education improves your psychology because you become less ignorant. You're less afraid. If you're less afraid, you're more willing to be curious and engage conversations that you don't know nothing about. But then again, it all ties down to your psychology. At the moment I do something as a human being, my psychology is involved. How I process it is because of my psychology. The way I look at it is because the way I perceive it through my eyes, the way I assume it's because of my psychology. Everything is based off your psychology. And so I started nerding over psychology like crazy.
Yeah, interesting. And so, like, what are your top, let's say, 3 influences, like mentors or people that you look up to right now in this economic environment, like people that you really look up to in terms of decision making and
economics. So for everybody if anybody ever buys my book, at the end of my book I literally have a page that's called My Teachers.
Ray Dalio.
Yeah. Exactly. So I literally have a list of all the people that I've ever paid attention to, that I've listened to, that I've watched, and really took their words to heart and processed it and contextualized it. So Ray Dalio is definitely one of them. Bill Gates is one of them. I also love Jeff Bezos, just from his work ethic perspective. He's not much of a talker in terms of the open market, but what he's accomplished from going from a little bookstore online to becoming one of the largest companies in the world is incredible.
Engineering, yeah.
Exactly. Tesla, Mark Cuban, also one of my favorites. Jim Cramer. Like, you see, the thing is, my list is pretty big. I have some historians, I have some philanthropists, I have some psychologists, I have some neurosurgeons, I have some.
I'm curious. What are the historians that you like?
Well, it's more of historical figures, I would say, more than historians. Like, so, for example,
Alexander the Great or something like that.
Yes, Alexander the Great is one of my favorite characters in history because of what he did. He's one of my favorites. Absolutely, he inherited an empire from his father that was already established and comfortable. But because his professor was, so I literally have everything written.
I think it's Plato or Aristotle. Something like that.
So exactly. So in history, within 150 years, I don't know if you can see it. So within 150 years, Socrates, who everybody knows Socrates, was the professor to Plato. Plato was the professor to Aristotle. Aristotle was the professor to Alexander the Great. So within 150-year span, you literally see a teacher-student dynamic building. And then you have Alexander the Great, who became known as one of the greatest conquerors, who never lost a battle in his entire lifetime, who wanted to create the city of Alexandria, which was all built on about the premise of knowledge. He wanted to create the greatest city of knowledge in history. And it got destroyed because of the Catholic Church and Roman Empire and this and that. But the premise was, who he wasn't afraid of knowledge, and he wanted to build on knowledge because he understood the value of it, which was taught to him by his teacher and the teacher before him. So Alexander the Great is one of my favorites. Socrates, Plato. Then I also have people like Heraclitus, which is another great guy. Those are more of my characters that I love, that I refer to in here. And then there's also someone like Carl Jung, but it's more of a historical guy from about 100 years ago. And he was more of a psychological, he was more of a leader in the world of psychology.
It's like Freud and all these guys.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Awesome. And so what would you advise millennials besides continuous learning, etc.? Like, how would you advise them to, like, if I'm a millennial right now, and I am, and let's say I only have, $1,000 to invest, and I don't know much, but I'm eager to learn, I'm eager to invest, and what would you say to me, for example?
So if we're going to talk about money and investing specifically as a millennial, my current advice would be, because of how crazy dynamic of the market is, my suggestion would be is either find yourself somebody who can guide you better into making better decisions, or at least into educating you, or sit and build more capital cash-wise before you say, because I have $1,000, well, I need to make money because it's the only money ever I'm going to have. If you assume that the $1,000 is the only $1,000 you're ever going to have, then you're never really going to build wealth. Right now, at a young age, the focus should be focus on ensuring you have cash flow and that you could save. That way, if you have cash flow coming in, you always can continue investing on a continuous basis. My first 3 years of work was cash flow, cash flow, cash flow, cash flow. I always said to myself, I have to make a minimum of $1,000 clean in my pocket every week. If I focused on that, that means that even if I lost $2,000, 2 weeks later, I'll have $2,000 more. So it's a risk. It's a hedge against potential loss in the market as well, because you have continuously money coming in, funneling you. So my first objective would be, don't worry so much about investing. Worry more about making sure you have cash flow being created. Because if you have cash flow coming in, then you can build your wealth and you can better diversify. You can better try and risk your money here and there. And you can continue to feed the market and your money will continue to there's two factors that add to your compounding of your wealth. It's one is, is there money coming in for me to feed the market in my stocks? And then two, am I investing in a good place for my money to grow? It's the same premise of a business. Yeah. If a business only focuses on cash flow, it doesn't focus on return on investment, ROI, then the business has very little growth outlook. R&D, that's why businesses focus so much on R&D. It's because I need to make sure my cash flow is sustained forever. So if I focus on future outlook by making sure my operations always exist, I'm always going to have cash flow coming in. If I always have cash flow coming in, I can always continue to expand my operations and build bigger and bigger stuff. So there's always two premises to everything. It's cash flow and investing. The first part is focus on building up cash flow in order to start investing. Mm-hmm. If you said, I just want $1,000 and I just want to put $1,000 and nothing more, sure. But then focus on only the good names and go long, especially since you only have $1,000, let's say. If you go short term on your outlook because of the way the market is and how unsure it's become and how it operates on entirely new factors, if your horizon is very short term, your money could become at risk and you could lose it. Without a doubt, especially since people are not used to seeing money come down 30% and then say, well, yeah, I can just wait it out. No, their psychology is going to eat at them and say, I might lose everything, take it out right away. But if they wait 2-3 years, it'll come right back and they'll probably be in the money again. So it's more about just focusing on building their character before the foundation before becoming a good investor. That's how I tell people to really focus on things. You don't have to rush to the market. Patience is a virtue, especially in investing, because there also it messes with your head.
Nice. Yeah, exactly. So for you, like when did you start investing and when did you start, interesting yourself to like all the, the finance world, etc.? Was it something that you were interested in like when you were a teenager? Or was it something that came along the way later in life?
Entrepreneurial wise, I've always been one. Like in high school, I went to an all-boy Catholic school. It was mostly Anglophones, Italian, Irish kids. And we didn't want to read French books because, in Montreal at high school, nobody really wants to read books, period. And then to have to read a French book, and Anglophones didn't really want to. So I told myself, I'm going to write French notes, detailed French notes, and I was going to sell those notes to all the kids. And I would make multiples of hundreds of dollars per book every single grade. So it was how I made cash flow in high school. So the premise of entrepreneur and focusing on niches and how to optimize things and make money was always a mindset that I always had. But I never really looked at the stock market as what it was now, the way I think of it, because school never told me or taught me about it, like at all. Like I never really understood what the stock market was. I understood I knew what it was, but I never understood it. I never understood the dynamics of it. I never understood how complex it was. I never understood how insanely fascinating it was, which is why I love it now. And then what happened was when I graduated university, I came back. I went to Italy for 3 months. That was my break. I came back and then all my boys had started investing because before that we had talked about getting into investing and we were all financially literate and interested in money. And I came back from Italy and they had all started investing in marijuana. This was about 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. That was where we all started really, was marijuana. So I came back and I was like, shit, I'm behind all my group of friends, my collective group of finance boys. I need to step up and get back to where they are. So I just rushed on trying to get a job, and that's how I got into restaurants. And then I realized how the cash flow was, and I just my strategy was work my ass off, make a shitload of money, save as much as possible, and then invest as much as possible. And then when I started investing, I started realizing, well, if I'm going to put my money in something, I want to understand where I'm putting my money. I want to connect to it. So every day I would wake up at like 8:39 and I would just spend an hour and a half reading every single morning. Even if I wanted to go back to bed, as long as I made sure to read and know every detail about every little business that I was investing in, A to Z. This way, my psychology would be better reinforced so I would not make as much of a stupid decision if something were to occur and I could focus long term. So it got in, and then that's when I realized, wow. And that's how I made a significant portion of my wealth to begin with, was because I went really aggressive on marijuana, even though the beginning was more perceived as a very risk outlook, but it was more of a guaranteed outlook in the sense that it was an industry that was going to grow because everybody smokes marijuana now in our generation. It's a norm. So that's how I was thinking about it. It's okay. It might not be a thing now, but down the line it will be. So there's growth to occur from that. So marijuana was really my entry point to this. And then I kind of started focusing on a lot of small cap commodities, niche markets like esports, blockchain, marijuana, certain commodities. And I just focused on a small cap because my mindset at the beginning was, how can I make money fast a little also? Even though I was still focusing on properly investing, I still had that little bit of a gambler's mindset fixated on the short term because there's an evolution. You can't go straight into a proper mindset because you need to kind of take your steps and really help you understand why you need to think that way. So I had that little bit of an aggressive outlook at the beginning, but I did a lot of due diligence. And that was really how I started doing really well, was because I was not afraid of researching and analyzing, and I made sure to have a lot of conversations. I started a couple Facebook groups with a couple finance guys. So this way I would always constant conversations about different companies. And I always liked being challenged in terms of, if I had an investment thesis and I present to somebody, I like to see how they would challenge it. If I could rebuttal it or dig deeper into solidifying why it was a good opportunity, I felt more comfortable with my investment strategy. But if I couldn't rebuttal an idea or a thought or a criticism about that strategy, then I would feel less comfortable and I probably either would get out of it or deviate from the plan, because I need to feel good about what I'm about to do in order to make sure I'm solidifying my psychology. And it just kind of spiraled. And then from there led down into realizing how much my psychology was important to how I invested. And then it became important about, especially COVID triggered the whole economic aspect of what I look at now, because COVID kind of highlighted a lot of economic issues between the political and the economic landscapes and the people landscape. Even though I was aware of it, you never really saw the true clash until COVID came about. And that really highlighted things. And then during COVID, I just spent my time just observing and watching. And then my obsession over economics, and especially behavioral economics, about how individuals' psychology and how social structures impact the movement of the economics, that's where my obsession really kind of built. And it's just trigger after trigger, making sure I was always around the same group of people, around good people that were interested in finance and building themselves, making sure I always watched and followed the teachers that I referred to in my book. It just compounded. After 4 years, just the compounding value of that, I don't even recognize myself anymore. So it's like, I had to start somewhere, just like everybody else. And it just added, and it grew and it grew and it grew. And now I feel like I just started my journey. So like, I don't even want to stop anymore. Like, I just reached that point on an exponential curve where you're about to spike up and it grow exponentially faster now. Yeah. I was on the slow part of it. And now I'm reaching a point where I'm about to shift upwards and really start exponentially growing.
Yeah. Yes, the compound effect. It's it's exactly crazy. When you're 1% better every day, after you're
it adds.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It adds, and that's why finance really, really helps to highlight all these things, because money is literally the dictating factor in everything we do as humans. So focusing on money and everything that touches money, it was just how I built my knowledge. Focusing on everything that impacted money. No matter what you name, no matter what you look at, one way or another, money is involved. As long as humans are involved with that, money is involved.
Yeah.
So it was just obsessed. I just became more and more and more and more and more obsessed. And the more the network validates the fact that when you speak, it's not stupid, and that when you speak, it's they listen. That validation from your peers, respecting your ideas and your thoughts, it gratified me. It made me feel good inside, because it made me feel that, wow, I don't need to. I'm not just dependent on myself now. Now I have people that can look towards me and that I can build something. And that's how I came about to building my wealth consulting business. Because finance, honestly, for me, finance is the most obsessive place for everybody that I meet that is in finance. Is extremely obsessive, especially when they're really focused on it. They develop very obsessive characters because it's so incredibly fascinating, and so your brain is constantly engaged and stimulated.
Yeah, I can see your passion of how you talk about it, and it's amazing. And don't you think also sometimes, you need to you need to rest from all these graphs and those things.
Yes.
Are you kind of a spiritual guy in a way, a little bit, or are you?
I am. If you spiritual in the sense of like you want to go into your inner thoughts, right?
Yeah, and also like you just want to let go sometimes of like
yes,
graphs and numbers and things, and just want to
yes,
like Ray Dalio. You know, I know Ray Dalio is big on transcendental meditation and like those kind of things. Do you practice also like Zen? You know.
So my Zen moments, I would say, is more my escape, because for me, I have a hard time getting out of my head. So for me to get out of my head, I like to be around people, because it forces me to have conversations or to get out of my head and not so be focused on my brain, because I'm a little obsessive over my thoughts. So I kind of know that as my weakness. So I knew that I need to kind of leverage my network to kind of get me out of my head. And that's why sometimes I like to play games. It kind of helps me relax, and it kind of helps me focus on an external project rather than always thinking internally. So one of my good friends, on a weekly basis, we'd like to play very complex games, because
like,
I still feel, sorry?
You play chess? Things like
I used to play a lot of chess, but now it's more like complex games like Dune, On Mars. They're very dynamic social games that are very, very complicated. But for me, it's kind of how I meditate, because it helps me, because of the fact that I'm playing a game and it's not real life. It kind of helps me focus my thoughts, and I'm willing to do a lot of trial and error. I don't mind losing, or I don't mind making a decision, even though it'll make me cost the game or whatever, because the way that the game is designed and how complex it is, it teaches me a lot about who I am and how I think. So I can take that and I can replicate it into my life. So it's kind of how I meditate. It's by playing these games. It allows me to calm down. It allows me to think differently. And it helps me to reflect about how I make decisions and the way I think about a game, when in reality, your life is also a game. But it's a very important game. And it matters your decisions you make. But these games, you can lose. It's fine to lose, because there's no cost involved. So this is where it kind of helps me relax. And then once in a while, I like to go to a chalet here and there. I go in a jacuzzi. But I used to be a gym guy, so the gym was mostly where I really focused on my Zen too. I just focus on my body, relaxing, and saunas too. Saunas, I sit in there for half an hour and I don't think.
Yeah,
because I'm just in bliss. So like because of my obsessive behavior and the way I think about things, I had to develop certain little rituals that help me escape, and they work well for me. I knew myself, and so that's why like I get exactly where you're saying. But I've always tried the thought of being able to sit down and just meditate and just reflect that way, but the way my brain runs, it's very hard. So I always needed something externally to pull me out.
I see. Yeah.
So that's how I control myself. I get to accomplish that by leveraging something to do it. It works for me that way.
Okay. Yeah. If it works for you, yeah. Because usually people want to have something from within, not from without.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
From something external. If it works for you, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because the external factors, it helps me reflect a lot.
Yeah.
Because the way I see, because how I engage with that external factor, it makes me then reflect in my head, okay, why did you do that? How did you do that? What does that say about yourself? Sometimes I'll be driving back home after playing a game night or something, and my entire car ride, I'm just thinking and reflecting about it. Why did I do that? How did I play? Why does it do that? Okay, how does it relate to real life? How does it relate to how I think? The moments I put myself in these things, it triggers a lot of self-reflection for me.
Mm-hmm. Do you have moments where? Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Do you have moments where you try to not think at all, like blank, like just retreat from thinking?
It's very hard. That's why I have my rituals where, like, for example, cooking helps me not think, or for example, I'll put on. I'll go for a walk with my dog, or I'll play with my dog, because I don't have to think in that moment. In that moment, I'm just a human with his dog, and we're just having fun. I personally have a lot of trouble thinking and not thinking, because of what I do as a business, every day I'm continuously fed with information that I have sort of a fear in the sense that if I go a week without paying attention in what's going on in the world, that's a week of information that I've lost and that I have to catch up to after.
Yeah.
So the constant overloading of information, because of what I choose to do and help people when it comes to money, I've kind of feel that I have a responsibility to make sure that I'm always engaged with constant information and not to hide from it. Because if I do, then I could be potentially putting my clients' money at risk. Mm-hmm. And I don't ever want to do that, because I want them to succeed and I want to succeed. So the realm that I'm in, I've kind of lost the ability to just not do. But then again, you know, like I still have tasks in my life where I said, like, I want to get back into stretching, you know, spend half an hour just relaxing and stretching, because I feel that if I just focused on that, it would be kind of a form of meditation where I can just, so I have little goals that I still establish myself where I need to get back to those things. Yeah. The last 3-4 years of my life have been constantly about just work and building myself externally, which is why I have all those external variables to kind of help me reflect. That now that I've finally gotten to a point where I'm not working as much and more focusing really on myself, that I can reestablish projects to help me meditate internally rather than depending externally on a factor. Mm-hmm. So I feel that now I'm kind of getting into a point where I want to get into the stretching, so I can kind of use that as a Zen moment where I can just sit down, relax, stretch, and just breathe and relax. Yeah. You know, because there's a lot of moments where I don't have that. And that's why I needed to use my dog for it or go to the gym, because that was the only way to get away. Mm-hmm. So your question kind of helped me also realize that right now, that I'm entering that pursuit now more than before.
Yeah. And how do you, in your life, because you told me like you have so much information going on and you're taking on so much information every day. How do you separate the noise from the information? The filtration process, I call it. Yeah. The ability to filter the constant overload of information. Honestly, it's more of an observer. I look at it more as an observer. I say that you have to, the way I look at it is really that it's learn to be patient and observe. Gather as much information as possible. Let it come to you. Don't assume until you see certain factors or information that comes up that validates other information. Once you get a pattern of validation, then you can start assuming certain things. Because what happens is a lot of people will get a piece of information, and then because they're very ignorant about other subjects, they'll over-assume something. Rather than saying, okay, I'm not entirely understand the subject or the realm of whatever is being said. Let me take it in. Let me hold on to that information. And then let me just continue to watch. Let me see what else comes out. What else did this person say? What does that person say? What does the government do? What does the economy do? Okay, I'm starting to understand a better picture of what's happening. I can paint a better picture. Now I'm going to process it. Until I develop enough information or evidence, in the way of science is, until I develop enough evidence, I will not assume something yet. I will speculate. I might speculate. But if I speculate, I will talk as though it's that only. It's pure speculation. And in order for this to become a reality, I need more validation from the landscape. Or what I might say is, okay, I've developed enough information in order to establish that this potential speculation actually has a lot of merit. And now I can go into it wholeheartedly because there's a lot of factors that demonstrate it's a valid point or an idea. Yeah. So it's really about, for me, it's really that. Just sit back, relax, and observe information. Kind of like Zen. I guess you'd say is meditation, the way you do it with yourself. Learn to do it with the landscape. Learn to take in stuff without processing it too quickly. Just meditate over the information. Relax, breathe, take the information in, because there's so much information now. It's incredible. Social media has completely changed the game for everything, for the good and for the bad. But all the bad aspects of it can be completely shifted if we just change the way we process the information being given by social media. Mm-hmm. And it's that, because there's so much information bombarding us constantly, we haven't evolved to the point where we understand how to slowly process loads of information. So for me, I believe it's really that. Just learn to become more of an observer before you speculate or before you overassume something. Observe, watch. And then it's like nature, right? If you go to nature and you just watch, eventually you see things build. Well, you
You can't just overstep yourself. Just relax, breathe, watch. Our reality, whether it's the nature, whether it's stocks, whether it's people, whether it's in economics or politics, the approach should always be the same. Just observe, watch, and then as information builds, as more things develop, then you can start building a better processed idea, or you can better speculate on a better outlook.
Yeah. So for me, people need to be aware of the confirmation bias too, because
exactly.
I felt into it myself. During the coronavirus period, like the peak of it, I was looking into like conspiracy theories and stuff like that. And I went into this world of like David Icke and so much information, and you get into this rabbit hole of like, there's an agenda and there's Bill Gates vaccines and all of that.
Exactly. So one way I help myself to really help differentiate between what's going out is I always ask myself, what if somebody's saying something, are they saying something off of a speculation, or are they saying something off of real evidence or real occurrences? If somebody is speculating off of a speculation and you're going to take their speculation as fact, well, then the premise of that thought is already flawed. But if somebody says this is about to occur because this has happened, not because it might happen, well, now that outlook is far more likely to occur, which is then, and that's how I then develop. I go into that thought. Mm-hmm. I always ask myself, what are they saying and where does it come from? Is it supported or is it speculated? If it's speculated and they're saying this, I can't entirely trust that yet because there's not enough evidence to support that speculation. And then as a human being trying to make sense of things, if I'm going to believe things purely, if I'm going to believe pure ideas off of other ideas rather than off of reality, then nothing's ever going to make sense to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get what you're saying. I guess, but sometimes the thing is like they're gonna speculate maybe for some stuff that could happen in the future, because you never know. They say, it's in the future.
Exactly.
But at the same time, they're gonna give you some very realistic and true things that happened in the past that you can, and that's where the.
But then the question becomes: have they contextualized it? Have they contextualized what they told you properly? Sometimes what they say could be right, but it hasn't been contextualized properly looking forward. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
for example, so you could say, for example, yes, Europeans came to North America and conquered the land and took it over. But you have to then contextualize it deeper. Who really pushed that occurrence? It was the church. The church was one of the biggest factors that really helped colonizing the world. So in reality, the main fundamental trigger to world supremacy and colonization was led by the church, because the church's premise was we need to spread the word of God. But nobody's focusing on religion or the church. Everybody's focusing on white people now and how we're the evil people. But we just did something based off of what a church told them to do. And it was a collaboration from there. But it's always about, I believe it's really always about context. We have to make sure that something is contextualized properly. Because if it's not contextualized properly, it leads into these very crazy ideas or thoughts or ideologies or conspiracies that, again, sometimes does no good for the people to even think that this, I really love Bill Gates as a human being. I find him incredible. And the whole conspiracy that was going around Bill Gates, honestly, was hurting me. It was like, I respect this man. I've always looked up to him. He created our entire system. Like, think about it. For me and you to operate right now, we're using a computer. Okay. The premise of computers was really developed because of Bill Gates. He kind of creating the whole system of operating systems. Most businesses operate on an operating system developed by Microsoft. Without Microsoft, almost everything we have in this system would be non-existent in the reality of today. But then again, we ignore everything he's done for our reality, and then we somehow want to twist it and say Bill Gates is this. But it's based off speculation, and without entirely understanding what it is he does, somebody might just twist it, one little word and one little perception, and then it leads down the rabbit hole. And then people love the rabbit hole because it's curious. It's intriguing. Conspiracies are very intriguing. But I felt attacked as a person because I respected that man so much. And if you're going to deny Bill Gates is who he is, then you have to deny everything he's ever done for the system, which is a lot. Mm-hmm. So it kind of demonstrates a lot of like flip-flopping in the psychology of certain things. And I find it there's certain ideas that I say I might not have an opinion about it right now, because I need to see how things develop more, what comes out more before I truly believe such a thing. I didn't want to believe certain things without having more validation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see. And just curious, because I didn't ask you, like, what are like kind of the hurdles that you kind of faced, and looking back, like you've learned something about them, like in some hurdles or some problem that you faced during your journey so far, and that you think would be like, that you think is truly important to the person that you've became now?
One was really how I looked at depending on other people. Like the way I look about really depend. Like if I wanted to build a relationship with anybody, or even if it's a girl or a friend or a colleague, I needed to realize that I couldn't. There's always two parts to every relationship, right? If I need to do something and I'm there to do it, and the other person is not doing it, I'm not going to push myself to go above and beyond to always get them to be engaged. Yeah. I'm going to walk away. Take your losses short, fast, sweet. Take an easy loss, move on, and rebuild. And relationships was one of the biggest things I learned about how to go about building relationships with people, because of the fact that I find a lot of people waste my time. And a lot of people deviate me from what I'm trying to do. Or instead of indulging what I want to do in my obsession, they make it about what I'm not doing, or they make it about how I'm wrong. And again, you're not helping me. You're not adding value to me. You're deviating me. You're being negative towards my pursuit. So how I engaged with people was one of my biggest hurdles, because if you can focus on spearheading a proper network, it grows fast. Because then more people want to meet you. They're always going to invite you to things, and then you're always collaborating with more and more people. So my relationships with people is really one of my biggest hurdles that I really focused on improving as much as possible. And then it was, how do I process information? That was another thing. The processing of my information was one of my other biggest hurdles. How to just take in stuff and how to make sure that I contextualize. And that's why conversations were always one of my favorite things to do, because by having a conversation, it helped me kind of pinpoint where people's biases were. This way I can then do an internal reflection of my own biases and how I put out certain thoughts and ideas to make sure that I did it in a way that was more constructive and positive rather than negative or deconstructive or unvaluable. So conversations was really one of my focal points. I always focused on making sure that I had solid conversations with people.
Sorry, were you always like very social and things like that, or did you have a period where you were
no, that's like I said, honestly, restaurants completely changed me, because in high school, for example, I went to an all-boy Catholic school, and I didn't have any female friends. Like I was not a conversation person, and I didn't really go out and have conversations with people unless people came to me and have a conversation with me. So I was very shy and timid. I was always in my own little bubble and in my head and my thoughts. But when I got into, like, I didn't even go to prom with anybody because I didn't even know any women to ask. You know, that's how I was. But the moment I got into restaurants and I started socializing, and you're always forced into conversations all the time, it built me, and it kind of taught me how to really be able to socialize, how to indulge a conversation, how to walk away from a conversation, how to really pinpoint how people think and this and that. So restaurants for me was the biggest factor to my socializing. That developed me as a person. I don't think I would be who I am without me having become a waiter to begin with. Because one, it provided me with a lot of liquidity and capital to do what I did with my money. And two, it forced me to socialize with a lot of people, and it made me meet a lot of people. So I'm very grateful to that beginning stage of my development. So yeah, I am more social than I've ever been because of this. Before that, I was nowhere near like this. Like doing this would not probably have never occurred if I did not do this, because I didn't care. That's why I didn't want to go to clubs. That's why I just didn't care to meet people. Mm-hmm. That was before. Now I'm entirely different. And socializing really changed that.
Socializing is key, yeah. And it's a skill. It's a skill that
is. Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
So tell me something that maybe you think, like, tell me something that you think is true, but that almost everybody disagrees with you. Like maybe something that you think, something that's proper to you that you think, and most of the people that you exchange that information with disagree with you on.
give me a theme. Like, do you want to contextualize this in terms of like money, pursuit, happiness? Okay, here, I'll give you one thing. Actually, one thing that just popped up in my head, which is obvious, is a lot of people think that my obsession on focusing on my brand and my wealth and my clients is as though I'm neglecting myself. They think that I'm wasting my youth right now. And a lot of people think that of me. They think, well, you're not. Why don't you focus on a girl? Why don't you focus on family? Why don't you just go on vacations? Why don't you do this? And then I tell them, because I'm focused on this is for me right now. I am building something. I am trying to build a legacy. I am happy doing even though to you it might seem that it's crazy, and it is somewhat crazy because I'll work 60, 70 hours, or whatever the case may be, and I'm burnt and I'm this and that. The gratification I get from knowing that I keep compounding and growing, I don't care. I'm going to keep doing it. And a lot of people don't want to do that, or they want the easy life. To them, this crazy life that I seem to be living doesn't seem to resonate with them. And they always try to deviate me, say, well, do it differently, do this instead, do that. And if I were to listen to them, I wouldn't be doing this.
Yeah.
I would have been here.
It's the herd mentality. Like, everybody wants to
exactly
short-term things. It's the same thing as finance, same thing as investments, same thing
everywhere. Exactly. So that was one of the biggest things for me, was that it's really more. I think that impacts everybody at the end of the day. No matter who you are, everybody has that kind of difficulty, because if you're around people that want a certain lifestyle and you want to be a part of that world with them, well, then you feel that you have to follow that same type of lifestyle. Yeah. And a lot of people don't want to be alone. So for them to say, well, no, I'm going to deviate and I'm going to do it on my own, they feel alone, and people don't want to feel alone. So I think that this struggle that was for me was something that everybody else struggles with too. Mm-hmm. Ironically, everybody struggles with it, but everybody also everybody forces that same struggle on everybody else, because they say, well, if I'm not going to do it, you shouldn't do it.
Yeah. True.
I think it's a struggle everybody has. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to wrap up, by the way, soon. It's been already an hour. I don't want to take too much of your time. And I know you got
but this is good. It's fun.
Yeah, this is good. So if you could turn back to your 18-year-old self, let's say, and you could give him a resource or give him some pieces of advice, what would you say to him to basically like save him time and headaches and all of that, you know?
I think it would be find people that are like you and go crazy trying to build something together. Because if I had started what I started now at 18 years old, I would be on an entirely different level at this age right now. Because I only started this really 23, 24 is when I really started myself. But if I had started that at 18 years old, focusing on building a network of good people that were like me, had a really strong mindset and building something, honestly, I think it would be a complete game changer for my life. I'd be an entirely different man. So I think that one of them would 100% be that focus on building a good group of friends that want to build something alongside you, because it helps. You get that external factor saying, push yourself. And men, we're a little more competitive in nature, in the sense we want to be bigger and better. So because of that, it's if I have a friend next to me that's strong and wants to do something, I want to make sure that I'm just as competitive as him. I don't want to lag. So I think if I had told myself that 18, it would completely change things. And 2 would be probably, don't be afraid to learn on your own, because that was something I didn't really do as much. Even though I loved watching documentaries, I don't think I ever looked at it the way I looked at things now. Just don't be afraid to learn on your own, because I hated school. I was a person that really disliked school. I really didn't enjoy it. Mm-hmm. But I still did high school. I still did CJEP. I still did university, got my degree. But I think I would have told them, even though you don't like school, don't be afraid of the idea of learning and education, because it still builds your character day in and day out after that. Like, your knowledge only exponentially grows you. And the more knowledge you have, the better you create connections in your brain to the reality of your life. And the more connections you build within your brain, the more life becomes easier to understand and less fearful. And the less fearful things are, the more risk and the more aggressive you're willing to become in doing your pursuit. Yeah. So those would probably be the two biggest factors for me, because me saying that now I'm exponentially growing right now, I would have probably exponentially started my growth like 3-4 years ago instead.
Yeah. And for someone that doesn't have, this peer group of friends with whom they, he can, strive to, like this power circle, of people.
Yes, exactly.
Dreams and things like that. For people that don't have this chance of having friends like that, they should take mentors, right? They should take people that shortcut the process, pay for advisory. Mentors.
One, I would say find yourself a mentor, but make sure you take your time to understand your like the thing is, if you I believe that if somebody's a mentor, they should be willing to take the time to have conversations for weeks at a time, months at a time with somebody before they force them into a relationship as a student mentor. Because as a student, you don't entirely know how to trust a person yet, because you're assuming they know what they're doing. And I know for a fact that there's plenty of people out there that want to be mentors, but they don't really know what they're doing, and they just want to do it for the sake of money. Mm-hmm. So as a student, you should also learn that you should take the time to try to build a relationship with a potential mentor before you begin paying him, because he could just be taking your money, and at the end of the day, he's not giving you the results you want because he's not connecting with you. And a student-teacher relationship, you really want to connect with the student, and the student wants to connect with the teacher. It's how you'll better learn. So the mentorship is definitely one, but obviously, like everything else, you have to approach it in a very cautious way. And two, it's if you can't find one, create yourself a network. Go socialize, go meet people, because honestly, at our age, when we meet people that are like us, it's very hard to not want to have a conversation with them again. We want to keep them around. We want to. So if you get that mindset in your head and you say, well, I'm going to go out there and force myself to meet people like me. If you have a good connection with people like you, you're going to probably likely meet again and again and again, because you think alike, and people that think alike like to be around each other. So if you don't have it, go create one. Mm-hmm. Life doesn't give you everything. And at the end of the day, if you want something, you have no choice but to go and try to create it yourself. So I would just say go out and create yourself. And then at the same time, also potentially even look for a potential mentor that can really help shortcut the process, because he will have made a lot of the mistakes before you. He'll be better at explaining it and creating the connections with your brain. He'll help narrow in your thoughts so you can better focus on where to learn and what niches to target. So they're both significant factors. Create it and find somebody else to help you develop that process much quicker.
Yeah, true.
Because I didn't have the luxury of having a mentor. I had to do it myself. I forced to build my network, and I had to learn on my own. I didn't have anybody to teach me. So my journey took a little longer than I would have liked it to, but I'm happy with where I am, and the journey did well for me. So yeah, and a mentor would probably help a lot of people, especially when you're young. I find young kids, man, nowadays, if they do things well, it's not impossible for you to have a good, successful life, if you start young. You know, everything is there for you to use. You just have to be willing to do it.
Yeah, it's basically more to shortcut the process of doing the thing. It's like
exactly. Because you'll have the experience, you'll have the knowledge, you'll know exactly what, don't focus on that. It's a wasting your time. Focus here instead, And then he has somebody to have a conversation with that understands the topic. So he could better integrate the theory into his head and better apply it afterwards, because he has a better understanding and connection of the theme and the topic and the knowledge. Yeah.
So lastly, I just want to kind of know about your goals now. Like, what would you like to make happen in, let's say, 10 years or something? You don't need to reveal all your dreams.
No, it's a
hedge fund or something like Ray Dalio style, or like what kind of?
So it's a good question, because this is the point in time where I've had to start reshifting my outlook, because the last 4 years was all about my 5-year, 10-year plan. But I'm 4 years in. I'm entering my 5th year soon, and my 5-year plan is somewhat built, but now I need to think another 5 years. So I got to think longer now. So I've been thinking about things, So now I think that my plan is I want to create not necessarily a hedge fund, but more an independent consulting firm where I build an active group of individual investors, where I am the advisory board to individual investors. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like a fund, but in the sense where every individual is their own investor, but they'll have a proper guidance and an advisor to doing everything with their money. And the second thing is, other than my strategic advisory for consulting companies, I think that I want to start building a financial organization where I start working with schools to help connect with students, to better build on financial literacy, on learning about economics and stock market, to be less fearful of wanting to engage with their money and talking about their money. Because I find a lot of people are afraid of talking about money, but only because they're in denial about the reality. So they have to focus on the short-term stuff because it's the only way to make them happy after. So one of the goals I've been starting to develop is I want to start working with schools and potentially get into the realm of politics to consult governments and organizations into how to go about connecting with people, how to better educate people, how to properly focus on the economics of things. Because I find that governments and a lot of organizations that are non-for-profit or charities, even though they have good intentions, their lack of understanding when it comes to money and economics ruins a lot of what they do, because they can't execute. They're wasting money, they're wasting time. And if you could just better provide financial governance and literacy to these organizations, I feel that as a system and as a collective and as generations come in, we can better improve ourselves as a whole. And if I want to make a big impact as a brand, I think that my pursuit has to start narrowing on helping people through an organization focused on literacy when it comes to money, finance, and economics. Mm-hmm. So I think that's my next stage. And then potentially longer term is a think tank. I want to potentially create a think tank where we focus on economic psychology, ethics, sustainability, and we provide consulting advisory to government officials, to companies, and social structures such as that, to make sure that even though your objective is your business and your money, you're never neglecting the system as a whole, because the system is dependent on you and you depend on the system to ensure that you can continue to do what you do. So you need a balanced approach, but a lot of people are weak in their approach in the balance. So the idea is potentially creating a think tank that becomes the equilibrium for a lot of organizations to learn how to balance their ideologies and their thoughts and their processes. So that's my longer.
Yeah. What is a think tank exactly? I didn't understand the idea.
So the think tank in general, normally a think tank is basically, it's like, I might specialize in an investment think tank. So it says, okay, I want you to do a research on this certain industry and provide me with input. They'll pay these people to do research, this and that. They'll give them the paper, and then whatever they want to do with it, they do with it. But I want to kind of evolve the think tank into, I want to, like, in the senses where I want to be the brain, the brain function of the center point. So governments that need to focus on how the economy functions, or how companies need to focus on how people think, or how they engage with their economy, or how they think about sustainability and how they think long term. I want to create a think tank that sits on advisories, that sits with governments, that sits with companies. And the purpose is to make sure that they're aligned, not only short term, but long term, with their business and the system's future. Whether it's nature, people, government, that everybody's better aligned. Because if you're better aligned, again, the spearhead occurs. You better spearhead, and there's less chaos within the system. So I want to evolve the concept of what a think tank is, and really be, the premise is this: I want to be paid to think, and I want to be paid to provide guidance and provide equilibrium for people to better balance themselves out. And that's where I want to do with my think tank. Okay. I want to be respected for my thoughts and my ideas and my intellectuality. That's what I want to be respected for.
Yeah, I saw you're big on like advising, being the board of advisors, think tank, things like that. So it's really, the information is the information niche of like financial information, financial guidance,
exactly,
to schools, things like that. And I think it's brilliant, the idea of like helping schools, because school lose so much money, and in school you don't really learn how to manage your money, how to make money, how to do this. And I think that it could be so much more optimized.
It's just to give a little context. In my book, on the chapter where I talk about education, I talk about contextualizing why the system seems to be flawed now. Because back in the day, the government was entirely in control of the economy. The government was the factor that decided how the economy shifted and adapted. But back in the day, when the government said, well, we need to build our infrastructure, we need to grow our economy. By building our economy, we become a stronger nation. By becoming a stronger nation, the government itself becomes stronger. So back in the day, the premise was, well, if I need to become stronger and I need to build a certain economy and infrastructure, I need to create a certain type of workforce. And that's why they designed the educational system to create workforce, but not to create free thinkers. And now, with the way the system is, the economy is no longer the deciding factor of the government. It's its own system. It's its own structure now. It does things on its own because it's only driven by the people. So the system now, which is educated, which is developed by the government, and they decide how the system is thought and learned. The government needs to evolve the thought process and the educational system in order to ensure that the way we think is more reflective of how the system is designed now. Because as individuals, we've been given more autonomy because of our phones, because of access to internet, because of access to everything we have more autonomy as individuals. We no longer need the government to tell us everything. We can go discover it on our own. So the government now has to evolve the educational system to provide a better understanding of our reality, because the current system is designed in an old framework, and that old framework didn't evolve. And that's why there's a massive gap occurring. And that's a flaw. You have to continuously evolve. The moment you stop evolving something, it'll eventually fade away. The premise of evolution is imitate behaviors and characteristics that allow you to adapt and survive. Well, then the government should be doing the same thing with everything, and they're not doing it. And that's where I find there's a lot of issues in our system, is because they're not evolving themselves. They're not.
Yeah.
So, no.
It's hard to change, the traditional school system and the ideologies there. It's so hard to change, because I feel like also the school system is the whole, like, I see it as a matrix, there's like this matrix, like there's this system put in place, whether in school or in the way people think, that keeps people in a bubble, in a bubble of thinking. And it's hard for people like us, me, you, or especially you, that wants to, burst that bubble and actually change the way people think about finance, for example. Yeah. It's so hard because you have almost everybody against you, like trying to keep the norm. And
absolutely,
so good luck with that. It's
thank you.
It's a hard challenge, but I'm sure, you'll get people. The things will change, but it will take time. And I think
100%. I can't be afraid. You can't be afraid of time.
Yeah, and
if it's a 20-year project, if it's a 30-year project, I'm not afraid. That's my life project now.
Yeah, and there's a lot of schools also that there are digital schools, like they don't have a campus or something. And those schools, for example, I know a school I did a nano degree. It's a digital marketing degree. There's a school called Udacity. I don't know if you know. Like, there's some schools that form you. They give trainings about, for example, blockchains or new things. And those are interesting too. For your project, because they also. But
100%, 100%. Because I think that now that with the way people look at education, people have to understand that you can't entirely depend on the system to provide you with the proper education. You have to develop your own inner desire to learn on your own and be educated on your own, because the system won't teach you everything. And if you don't take responsibility to learn on your own also, then you'll always be dependent on the system and its flaws. Always. You'll never be able to exceed it.
Awesome. So, man, it was an awesome interview, Nic. How do people can find you? Like, what's your Instagram, website?
So if you want to find me on Instagram, it's at Nic Tartaglia. So NicTartagli. It's right like that. Mm-hmm. And then if you guys want a website, I have my podcast, which is about business and everything. It's at newgenmindset.com. So if you go there, newgenmindset.com, you go there, you can find my business podcast where we talk about investment allocations and economics and stuff like that. And so there's that. There's also, I have 2 blogs written there. And then on Facebook, Nic Tartaglia. Basically the same way I spell my name on Instagram. My brand and who I am is on that page. So if you follow me there, you follow who I am as a person and how I'm building myself. Awesome talk, man. Guys, take a look at his book as well, The Intelligent Millennial. It's one of the best sellers on Amazon. It's I'm going to take a look at it myself too. It sounds like I saw some things there, and I saw what got me into, like, I want to buy it now, because I feel like you've put a lot of things together, even in terms of psychology.
And I feel like it's an interesting book. I'm going to take a look at it.
Good.
So anyway, take a look at his book as well, The Intelligent Millennial. And see you soon, Nick. Take care.
Thank you.
And peace. Bye.
Peace, man. Thank you. Ciao.